Hey everybody, we are gearing up for our big spring cleanse. Now, if you've never done a cleanse before, it probably sounds a little bit scary. And I'll tell you what this isn't. This isn't a colon cleanse like you've heard of from some other companies. You don't need to hide out in the restroom. It's not going to interfere with your life. This is a really gentle support for what's already going on in your body. So our body has these natural filtration systems that protect us from toxins and help us digest food and all these wonderful things. But what happens is that our normal standard American diet and our environments that have a lot of toxicity and things like that are interfering with our capacity to even keep up. Okay, so what we need to do is come in and support those organs. And before that, we start getting into the details of the cleanse, I want to talk to you about another big reason why we do it. So we know that our skin probably is going to look a little bit better. Our sugar cravings might go down. We'll have a little bit more energy and a little bit more mental clarity. But there are some reasons why, and I've been digging into that, and I think it's fascinating. I hope you think it's fascinating too. I know I'll start talking to some people about it and their eyes glaze over, but I think it's really fascinating, and I think that it's kind of like a new frontier in science. So I don't know, just hang on and see what we'll be talking about here. So I'm going to share my screen with you. I put together a presentation that is based on a documentary I watched, plus my own, other research I've done, and some things that we know about doing the cleanse. So let me see. There we go. So I'm calling it gut check, and we use that expression as when you need to seek wisdom on something, or something happens and it's a real gut check. So we know that our emotions are linked with this area of our body. But what we haven't really talked about is how much that body affects our brain. And that is kind of where we're going with this. So a lot of researchers are now calling the gut our second brain. If you haven't heard of this concept, the gut-brain connection is actually a new frontier. Our gut contains as many neurons as the average dog. So if you think your dog is smart, your gut is equally intelligent. So if you've trained your dog to do tricks and things like that, your gut actually contains as much intelligence as your smart dog. And we know that dogs can be very smart. So it's a completely complex system. It's not just a tube of digestion. We learned about in health class that that main function of our gut is to, break down food and digest it and eliminate waste. But it's so much more than that. So it contains 200 million neurons and hundreds of billions of bacteria. And this guy, who is at Columbia University in New York, helped to rediscover the gut. And so he happily calls himself the Leonardo of the bowel. He asserts that we have two brains. He says they look similar anatomically, that like those wiggly tubes, like your brain has those little wavy marks and stuff. He thinks that they look similar. And they're discovering that they have shared responsibilities in the body. So he says the brain houses the central nervous system, and the gut houses the enteric nervous system, and they're connected by a very large nerve called the vagus nerve. They even speak the same language. So the language they speak is in neurotransmitters. So one of the neurotransmitters that's important in our bodies is called serotonin. And we've talked about that before with our Serenity products, the sleep gels. Serotonin is really important to make us feel happy and rested. It's important to help us get good sleep. And 95% of your serotonin is actually created in your bowel. So your brain might use it and it might communicate other things throughout your body, but it's created in your bowel. So that is super interesting too. And where we used to just consider the fact that emotions, like I was saying, when you feel butterflies in your stomach or something like that, we used to think that emotions influenced our gut, but our gut is actually influencing our emotions as well. And we'll dig into more of that too. This researcher thinks that maybe the gut is the house of the subconscious. So what Freud called the subconscious, you know what that is. It affects a lot of your life, a lot of how you react to things, how you interact with other people. He thinks it's housed in the gut. And he invented a term called gastropsychoanalysis, which Freud was a psychoanalyst. And he is doing the research to figure out what the connection is there. So he noticed that the nerves in unhealthy people are overactive, the nerves in the gut. And he's calling it an intestinal neurosis. So neurosis has always been a term used with the brain. And he says it's brought on by stress, and it involves diseases like irritable bowel syndrome. And so what he's trying to figure out is if where it's starting. So are the emotions affecting the gut, or is the gut affecting the emotions? And so he's been doing experimental treatments with hypnosis that's shown to be beneficial. So patients who undergo this hypnosis to relax are actually perceiving less stress in their body and less pain in their intestines. And again, he still hasn't figured out why, but that will be forthcoming as well, I think. This researcher in France, he's actually he focuses on digestive health. And what they've been doing is learning how intestinal biopsies can show them what's actually going on in the brain. So if you were to do a biopsy on the brain, obviously it would be very invasive and very risky. But a gut, an intestinal biopsy would be much easier to do, less invasive, and much safer for the patient. And he has noticed the connection of Parkinson's patients, for example. There's always a component involving their digestive system. And so they've noticed that these digestive symptoms manifest about 20 years before the intellectual and neurological component starts to break down. So you'll see those, if you've known anyone with Parkinson's, they start to lose motor function in their hands, and they start to lose, in the later stages, start to lose some of their intellectual faculties. But the digestive component was there long before. And so he's saying if we can open this window to the brain, he's calling the gut the window to the brain, if we can understand what's going on there, we can diagnose Parkinson's and things like that much, much sooner. And the outcomes, you can imagine, if you can diagnose something 20 years before, your treatment is going to be much better and the outcomes are going to be much better. So that's super exciting. So I hope you're seeing here that these researchers are all over the world. So we've had, someone in Colombia, someone in France, there's researchers in Belgium. This guy is in China, and he sees the benefit. Obviously, Chinese medicine is a lot different than Western medicine, where Chinese medicine focuses on the body as a whole, and Western medicine looks at, an isolated body part or symptom. And he's saying there's benefits to both. So he uses some Western medicine and some Chinese medicine. And he's actually a researcher and a professor and a doctor. So he accidentally discovered acupuncture on the abdomen. So in ancient Chinese medicine, they never did acupuncture on the abdomen. And he had someone come to him. This was back in the 70s. He had someone come to him. It was an old worker, and he was being pushed there in a wheelbarrow. He couldn't move. He was in so much pain. And so he did the standard acupuncture points, and the patient had no relief. But he did a few around the navel, and he had a group of students watching him. So he felt like he really something needed to happen here. He needed to prove himself somehow. So he was kind of just grasping at straws, and he did these areas around the navel, and the patient sighed with relief, like his whole body released. And he got up and felt better. So he started researching. He's devoted the rest of his career to researching what acupuncture on that region does and what it means. And he has discovered that in one study that they did an MRI on the patient before the acupuncture treatment and then again after. And they noticed a dramatic increase in the zones of the brain that were activated. And just by placing these needles, if you've ever had acupuncture, it's not painful. So around the abdomen, right around the navel, and their cognitive function and emotional regulation increased as well. So doesn't that seem mind-boggling? Like we would never think that, but he kind of just discovered it by accident. And I've just been thinking about what that could mean for people who have cognitive and emotional impairments just by, connecting with those nerves there. This researcher, he's in France, he says that your body is an ecosystem. He is saying that we have hundreds of billions of bacteria just in our gut, and that those are more numerous than the number of stars in the galaxy. So think about that. Like, think about how vast the galaxy is when you look out at the stars in that there's this own mystery of activity happening on your own body. And he says your body is actually more bacterial DNA than human DNA. You're basically a bus of bacteria. Like you're just housing these bacteria and they are influencing a lot of your life. This researcher in Canada says that we will eventually, because our microbiome is established largely at birth, as the baby travels through the birth canal, the baby, their life inside the womb is very sterile. So as they come out, they're exposed to bacteria, and that's establishing their microbiome, which informs their immune system and many other things. And he thinks that, it's the largest immune system in your body, and that being exposed to more bacteria keeps it alert. So it's actually a good thing. So all these years that we've been sterilizing everything, and all of a sudden our children have these allergies and there's so many autoimmune diseases, cognitive impairments, and maybe that we shouldn't be over sterilizing everything. Just something to think about. So babies who are born, if the mother is given antibiotics, if the baby's born via cesarean section, and bottle feeding, all those things which are necessary sometimes, but we should be aware that they diminish that microbiome. They just diminish the strength of the immune system. So those are special things to take into consideration for your children, or if you're anybody on your team that you're helping has had those conditions as well. So he says that our microbiome is as individual as our fingerprints, which is really neat. But eventually we will discover, his hope is to discover an ideal set of flora that will be given at birth to an infant, and then at various stages throughout development, kind of similar to the way that we do vaccine schedules through various stages of development. He thinks this would be a much better way to build the immune system. We don't need to get into that debate today, but it is really, really interesting. This researcher, who is in Belgium, has been researching bacteria and obesity. So what they noticed was that the gut bacteria in obese individuals was much different than those in healthy individuals. So they studied the effect on mice by giving half of a group of mice the healthy bacteria and feeding all of the mice a very high-fat diet. And what they noticed was that the mice with the healthy bacteria took twice as long to get fat. So his finding from that was that the bacteria actually communicates with our genes. So we have genetic predisposition to obesity. We know that. But the bacteria actually tells the genes to break down the food or to store it in our bodies. So that might be another thing that's completely revolutionary. He says that obviously the aim isn't to just give people this bacteria so they could eat whatever they want, but to, use it in moderation and to be wise to it. There's another researcher who was studying bacteria and behavior. So these, like we were saying, you're basically this bus of bacteria, and they're all communicating within your body on a level that you're not hearing or observing. So this was on the behavior of mice. So they took, they know that different breeds of mice or different strains of mice, I guess, are prone to certain behaviors. So they have different dispositions. So he was saying that these Swiss mice are typically very aggressive, and they were given the bacteria from a breed of mice that was typically more docile and quiet and calm. So after the Swiss mice were given this bacteria, they too were calm and docile. Isn't that mind-blowing? And so then they took the bacteria from the Swiss mice and gave it to the other mice, and they were more aggressive. So it's like they switched personalities just by switching the bacteria. In one part of the study, they actually gave mice bacteria from cats, from the cat microbiome, and the mice lost their fear of the cats and even became sexually attracted to them, which was very strange, obviously. And the mice were eaten. So yeah, they're programmed, nature has programmed mice to be afraid of cats because they're a threat. But the mice just kind of lost their fear of the cats. This is another researcher in Los Angeles who studied the response and the connection of the gut and stress. So she was saying that, it sounds like our landscapers are here. It's getting noisy out there. She studied probiotics on the effect of stress responses and brain responses to stressful stimuli. So changing the gut changed the response in the brain. So she had groups of people who would actually do the test in an MRI tube, and they would be in the MRI and, kind of watching their brain activity. And they would be shown stress-provoking stimuli, and the responses actually changed over time if they were given the probiotics. So the control group had no change. Super interesting. Other body systems that are integrated, the liver obviously is a big part of our digestion as well. It filters our blood and detoxifies chemicals and metabolizes medicine if we're taking medicine. It helps to regulate hormones and does many other things. And Dr. Mark Hyman is someone who I follow, and he recently said that as many as I think it was like 70% of Americans have a fatty liver and they don't even know it. And so you wonder why we would have these fatty livers. And he's actually a proponent of high fat diets. It's not from the fat, it's from sugar. So that article is posted on my page. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the webinar about it, but it's just another thing to consider, that we really do need to take care of our livers. And he made some recommendations that you're probably already doing if you're taking the lifelong vitality supplements. So what else is working against the system? Pesticides and processed food is working against your gut flora. Obviously, if you are ingesting pesticides, it's not going to promote a healthy balance in your colon. Processed foods, which aren't even really foods, they're kind of food substances. Overprescribed antibiotics, over-the-counter medications, even mouthwash is something that they attribute to, if you're killing 99% of the bacteria in your mouth, we used to think that's a good thing, but it's not a good thing. I mean, we need that back. We need some bacteria. There is good bacteria and there's bad bacteria. So doing everything antibacterial is very bad. Like, we just haven't really thought it through before we started introducing all these antibacterial products in our lives. Even they started making, in the 90s, they started making Microbian and embedding it into countertops. So if you have countertops from a certain area, it might have Microbian in it, which is a really, really harmful endocrine disruptor. So that would be something to look into and get rid of if you have them. I know a lot of the baby changing tables in restaurants and things like that, public restrooms have that microban sticker on it. It's like advertised as like a really great attribute, and it's terrible. It's really bad, especially for our babies. If you put them on there and they're like rubbing their feet on it and they're absorbing that microban, and it's disrupting their whole system. Super crazy. Stuff you would never think about. Another thing that's harmful is chlorinated drinking water. So we're ingesting chlorine. It's good to get a good water filter. Exposure to pollutants such as heavy metals and amalgam fillings. So if you have metal in your mouth, it's slowly breaking down over time and leaching into your body. Other heavy metals that come from different things. It can come from your water, the air. There's lots of different ways we get exposure to heavy metals. I actually met a mom in my neighborhood who suffered from arsenic poisoning. She and her son both suffered from arsenic poisoning, and it was from their new leather sofa. So you would never in a million years think that a leather sofa could be that dangerous. And he was demonstrating symptoms that almost seemed like autism to me. I've worked with kids with autism, and we know lots of people with autism. And the way he interacted with my son, I just thought, right away, he had something on the autism spectrum just because of his social interactions and stuff. And it's arsenic poisoning. So imagine that heavy metal coming from your sofa into your brain or your bloodstream and affecting your behavior. Completely crazy. Another thing that interferes would be surgeries or having colonoscopies, having chemo or radiation. Anytime you're wiping all of that out, all of the good stuff out, you need to be able to replenish it. And then, like I said, dramatic sanitation procedures. If something happened and you sanitized your house like crazy, it's not necessarily a good thing. We need some of that good bacteria to stick around. Another thing working against us is Candida. I posted on this. We could have a whole week. We could speak for hours on Candida and everything that Candida overgrowth, every impact it has on our body. So Candida is a yeast, and it exists in our body to break us down when we die, except that our standard American diet, which is a lot of sugar and a lot of flour, which converts to sugar, potatoes convert to sugar, all of those things help this yeast grow. So when Candida continues to grow, first they start out like little ovals, and then that's how they're supposed to be. Candida, when it's kept in check, is actually fine. It serves a purpose. But what we're doing is feeding it like crazy, and we're not keeping it in check, and it's taking over our bodies. It eventually becomes a fungus. It grows into a mycelial form, which means it grows a little tail and looks like a tadpole, and then it burrows through the walls of your intestine, which is really gross. But the real gross part is that it creates little holes in your intestine so that waste that's getting carried through is able to seep back into your bloodstream, and that's called leaky gut. And leaky gut can be responsible for all sorts of things, cause pain and inflammation all throughout your body. It can result in adult onset allergies. So we know a lot of people who have never had an allergy to nuts or shellfish or something like that, and then all of a sudden they'll have it and have a terrible reaction as an adult. And it doesn't really, there's no reason why you would think, I was never allergic to shrimp before, and now all of a sudden I'm having this, anaphylactic shock because I've eaten some shrimp or something cooked in shrimp, fried, say where shrimp was also fried. It could be really dangerous if you have that allergy. And it's completely crazy. And I think it's caused by this leaky gut syndrome, because there's actually so much waste in your body that it's, and one more thing that your body can't handle. And that leads to a whole host of other diseases. This book actually came out in the 80s, and it's still not widestream. Or mainstream and are widely known. I think that's because it is bad for business. If we kind of figure these things out, it's not really going to keep money flowing through some healthcare providers. So here's some ways to tell if your gut bacteria is out of whack. You might have digestive issues. You might have emotional and mental issues. You might have vitamin and nutrient deficiencies if you're not absorbing things properly. You're on cycles and cycles of antibiotics. So if one thing leads to another. So you take a round of antibiotics, that depletes your immune system. And then next thing you know, you have another, say people get in cycles with urinary tract infections or ear infections or something like that. So one area of the body that keeps having problems. And you're in this vicious cycle of antibiotics. And then every time you take another round, it depletes your system even more. The next time something arises or bacteria is existing there, the bad bacteria, your body doesn't know what to do with it. Things like that. So skin conditions, we have people ask all the time, oh, do you have any oils for eczema? And it's like, well, some things could soothe the skin, but if you have this internal issue happening, you're not going to be able to support the skin that much to the skin issue is just manifesting what's going on internally. So that's just kind of like your red flag. It's like the lights on your dashboard coming on in your car telling you that something is wrong inside when you have a skin issue. You have unmanaged stress. So we all have stress. Everybody has stress in their life, unless you're hiding out in a bubble or something. Everybody has stress, but the way you deal with it is going to make or break your health. And another thing that is an indicator that your bacteria is out of whack is if you have an autoimmune disease, which we're seeing a lot of. I have a friend who is a scientist. And she works for her husband, who's a chiropractor and nutritionist. And she says that the number of people my age who are coming in with, people in their 30s and late 20s who are coming in with autoimmune disease is like something they've never seen before. All of his years of practice, and he's older and more experienced. They've never seen things like this before. And it isn't just that it wasn't being diagnosed or people didn't know. Like, people are truly more sick than they used to be, and there's really something wrong. So what do we do? So just like if you're working in your garden this spring, what do you have to do before you have a healthy lawn or a healthy garden? You have to pull all the weeds, and then you replant the good stuff once you've pulled all the weeds. So then you give the good stuff the conditions to flourish. You water it and give it sunlight and there's things like that we can do for our bodies as well. So the thing that we do, I do it about twice a year. You could do it quarterly if you want to. It's this 30-day reset. So I equate this to another metaphor, like the gardening one would be cleaning your filter organs. And, like when you go to have your oil changed every 3,000 miles or something, you change the oil, you change the filters and all those things. And that's going to help your engine run properly. So just like you need to give it fuel every day, we're giving our bodies food every day, which is our fuel. You need to refuel your vehicle constantly almost. So we need to refuel our bodies constantly, and the fuel makes a big difference, but also we need to do the big clean with the oil change. And that's what this is. That's where this comes in. So if you're already taking the lifelong vitality, you're already setting the foundation for your body's natural, your body is designed to cleanse itself. And when you're giving it what it needs, it will cleanse itself. But you also have to reduce the amount of toxicity that you're bringing in too. So you need food enzymes to break down your food and be able to get the nutrition out of it. You need endocrine to support your filter organs. So your liver is the filter organ, your colon is the filter organ, your lungs, kidneys, and your skin, which is your largest organ, is also a filter organ. And so that's why a lot of times what's manifesting in your gut is being exhibited on your skin as well. So ecosyste is the product that pulls the weeds, and lemon will help balance your pH. You can have that in your water. I always drink out of like a big quart thing of water, and that way I know I'm getting enough water throughout the day. And in this big thing, I usually just do 1 or 2 drops because it's so concentrated and powerful. You don't need a ton of it, just a little bit. And then the Obesit is what we'll do to replace the good bacteria. So you this takes place over 30 days. And so the first 10 days, we're doing your, oh, and also the DDR prime. I forgot about that. DDR prime, DDR stands for damaged DNA response. And it's just such an amazing product. It's one of those things where if I was on a deserted island, I would really want that product with me, because it's just kind of for whatever ails you. It works with your cells to promote health. And when cells are unhealthy, they're designed to die, and sometimes they don't. And so this helps to restore that natural process. And it's just, I noticed a big difference with how I feel when I remember to take that. Or it also comes in a liquid and you can apply it to your feet. So the first 10 days are your supplements, your lifelong vitality supplements. If you don't know about those already, I don't really have a lot of time to go into depth on them, but we can talk about that. You could reach out to me. The DDR prime, and then the Zendocrine, and that kind of ramps you up for the initial stages of the cleanse. And then the middle 10 days, you're taking those plus the ecosyste, and that's going to begin to eliminate, help your body eliminate the Candida and other pathogens and parasites and things that are hiding out where they don't belong. And then the final 10 days is you stop the ecosyste, you continue everything else, and then you add in the PB assist, which is the good bacteria. And you continue to take the Terrazyme and things like that when you're, with each meal and things like that. So the Terrazyme is another thing. If you do have one of those cheat days where you really want a heavy meal, something really starchy, if you take that, you don't get the big sluggish feeling afterwards. So if that sounds really complicated to you, I need you to go over to Facebook and join our group. You can search for it. It's called Spring Clean Yourself, because we did a lot of treat yourself for a while, and we need to get back on track and start taking care of our gut, not just for our gut, like our physical, like, how we refer to gut as like, if your belly is overflowing, but also your gut in terms of those many neurons and all the bacteria and all of the things that are really driving your brain and your overall health. So I hope, well, I'm sure that was a lot of information. If you want to watch that documentary I was talking about, it's on Amazon right now. It's called The Gut, the Second Brain, or something like that. Super interesting. And there's a lot of other things. You could look up that book on Candida. You could look up Dr. Mark Hyman, and go over to my page called Essential Oils Daily, where we're having information. I'm always posting new information there and sharing things from other people who are much, much smarter than I am. And find this group on Facebook, get plugged in, get your kit. If you're already a wellness advocate or wholesale member with doTERRA, you might just need to find the pieces that you're missing. You might already have your lifelong vitality. If you're brand new, you might need that whole kit. So you want to get this, it's called Cleanse and Restore Kit, and it's $245. And that comes with your wholesale membership for the year, so that you, whenever you want to reorder anything, or if you want to get a diffuser or other oils and things like that, it's going to be 25% off. So go to mydoterra.com/essential oils daily, and that's me, and you could shop there. And again, just reach out to me if you have any questions. All right, we'll see you over in the group and over on Facebook. Thanks a lot, guys.